Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. Let's get started. I'll look into our daily quiz. Before we start with the practice questions for the day, we have an announcement. BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS would be conducting National Scholarship Test, which is scheduled to be conducted on 12th of March 2023 at 11 a.m. What is that you have to do? Link will be given in the description box. Give the necessary information and you would be able to win some attractive scholarships. Let's get started and look into the first question. Who among the following resigned from Imperial Legislative Council after the Rowlatt Act was passed? Bhai Parmanand, Madan Mohan Malviya, Mazhar ul Haq, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, Syed Nabi Ullah. The answer to this is 2, 3 and 4 only. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference to the Jallianwala Bagh in the PIB article. Let us try and understand what are these statements. We will look at the background of the Rowlatt Act and the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. When we speak about Rowlatt Act, it is officially known as the Anarchical and Revolutionary Crimes Act of 1919. This was passed in 1919 by the Imperial Legislative Council. What did the British do? The British all of a sudden felt there was huge scale of nationalism that was happening in the state of Punjab back then. So they felt if there are people who are engaged in any of the so-called terrorist activities, according to the British, such people can be arrested without any trial. They can also be put behind bars as well, and they can be arrested for as many as 2 years without the trial. So this empowered the police officers of the British government back then to search a place without any warrant. So this was called as a Black Act because it did not give basic liberty to the people. So this act is called as the Rowlatt Act. So the Rowlatt Act was passed by the Rowlatt Committee presided by Sir Sidney Rowlatt. It authorized the arrest for 2 years without trial of any person suspected of terrorism living in British India. Why were they called as black bills? That is because they did not give rights to the people of the country, and as a result of which, three people resigned from the Imperial Legislative Council. This included Madan Mohan Malviya, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, and Mazhar ul Haq. So the answer to this would be 2, 3, and 4, which is nothing but B. So when you consider who were arrested during this period, the Congress leaders who were arrested were Dr. Satyapal as well as Saifuddin Kichlu. This is what happened with respect to the Rowlatt Act. After the Rowlatt Act was passed, there were two leaders who were arrested, and people did not like the Rowlatt Act as well. So they started protesting against the Rowlatt Act. And one such scenario on the day of Baisakhi, 13th of April 1919, people wanted to oppose this move, and in a particular place in Jallianwala Bagh, they came up together in a peaceful manner. They were protesting against it on the day of Baisakhi. That is when General Dyer came up to this place with his troops, blocked the only narrow entrance to the garden, and ultimately started firing against the people. Large number of people passed away, and that is what we call as Jallianwala Bagh massacre. So the background to this is Rowlatt Act, and what is the resultant of it is the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. Now let's look into the next practice question. Consider the following statements with respect to National Platform for Disaster Risk Reduction. NPDRR is a multi-stakeholder platform constituted by the Government of India to facilitate dialogue, sharing experiences, views, ideas, action-oriented research, and explore opportunity in the area of disaster risk reduction. NPDRR is chaired by the Minister of State in charge of a disaster management. Secretary is the Vice Chairperson of NPDRR. Which of the statements given above are correct? The answer to this is one only. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference in the PIB article. It says PM to inaugurate third session of National Platform for Disaster Risk Reduction on 10th of March. Let us try and understand what are these statements. First, let's look into the background. Over the past few years, what we have witnessed is India has come up with its own share of laws. It has come up with its own share of institutions as well. For what? For disaster reduction at the state level, at the national level, and also at the district level. So we know for the fact there are large number of disasters that can occur. It can be man-made disasters, it can be natural disasters as well. We can have natural disasters in the form of tsunami, in the form of earthquake, so on and so forth. We can also have man-made disaster like chemical disaster. To address all these, what we require is the legality. Legality in the sense we require laws, and at the same time to execute these laws what we require is the institutional structure. So for the past few years, to ensure that disaster reduction happens, what we have is the legal principles. We also have the institutional structure as well. Added to it, what we have is the cross-cutting development. What is this cross-cutting development? It is not just one ministry which has to engage in disaster reduction, but many other ministries will also have to be taken into picture. Many stakeholders will also have to be involved as well. When we say multiple stakeholders, it includes the government, it includes the private sector, it also requires the assistance of the civil society as well. So whenever a disaster occurs, it is the people in that particular locality who immediately drive to that place, and they also ensure that meaningful assistance is provided to the people who are stuck in the disaster. So it is a multi-stakeholder approach. So in the past few years, what we have taken is multiple steps to reduce the disaster reduction, and as a result, one such tool that the government of India came up with and constituted is called as the National Platform for Disaster Risk Reduction. So basically, this happens to be one of the platform which helps in reduction of the disaster, and what we have is different number of people like the government, parliamentarians, mayors, media, international organizations, NGO, local community representative all come up together. So the first statement is right. NPDRR is a multi-stakeholder platform constituted by the government of India. So the first statement is right. But when it comes to the second statement, it is not chaired by the Minister of State in charge of disaster management, but instead it is chaired by Union Home Minister, and the Minister of State in charge of disaster management will be the vice chairperson, and it is not the secretary. Now let's look into the next practice question. With respect to Sagarmala program, which of the following statements are correct? The core vision of Sagarmala initiative is to reduce the logistic cost for exim and domestic trade with minimal infrastructure investment. It is the flagship program of the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. For implementing the Sagarmala project, state governments would set up a state level Sagarmala committee that would be headed by the Chief Minister. Which of the statements are correct? The answer to this is 1 and 3 only. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article on the PIB makes a reference to the Sagarmala program. Let us try and understand what are these statements. When you look into the first statement, yes, the core vision of the Sagarmala program is to reduce the logistics cost for the export and import, and at the same time domestic trade with minimal infrastructure investment. First statement is right, but when you look into the second statement, it is the flagship program of the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. This happens to be the wrong statement. Why? That is because it is not the Ministry of Commerce or Industry, but instead it is the Ministry of Shipping. So the second statement is wrong. When you look into the third statement, yes, for implementing the Sagarmala project, state governments would set up state level Sagarmala committees that would be headed by the Chief Minister, or it can also be the ministry in charge of the Ministry of Ports. If they have such a designation, it can also be such person as well. So the answer to this would be 1 and 3 only. Now if you look into the objectives of the Sagarmala, it aims to reduce logistic cost for exim and domestic trade with minimal infrastructure investment, lowering logistics, improving export competitiveness by developing port proximate discrete manufacturing clusters, optimizing time or cost of exim, and reducing the cost of transporting domestic cargo through optimizing modal mix. Sagarmala project thus includes many components, which includes port modernization and new port development, port connectivity enhancement, port-linked industrialization, coastal community development, coastal shipping, and inland waterways transport. So basically, this happens to be one of the initiative taken by the government of India to develop the ports that are present on the India's coast. So the objective is to ensure that we have a portlet development along India's coastline. So this helps in development of new projects. This helps in development of brownfield projects as well. So what do you understand by greenfield projects and brownfield projects? When you say greenfield projects, it is development of a project on a new scale. So we are starting from the scratch. So there is a development of a port from the scratch, but at the same time, when you say brownfield project, there is already an existence of a project. You are bringing new innovations to the project. When it comes to greenfield projects, it is new project from the scratch, but when it comes to brownfield projects, it is nothing but bringing changes to the existing project. So this port-led development basically means that we are bringing massive change when it comes to port development at the green scale level and also at the brown scale level. Now let's look into the next practice question. With respect to Vice President of India, which of the following statements are correct? The Vice President is elected by an electoral college consisting of members of both the houses of parliament in accordance with system of proportional representation by means of single transferable vote, and the voting in such election is by open ballot. The oath of office to the Vice President is administered by the Chief Justice of India. If the office of the Vice President falls vacant by resignation, removal, death, or otherwise, then election to fill the vacancy should be held within 6 months from the date of the occurrence of such a vacancy. Which of the statements are correct? The answer to this is none. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article on the Indian Express makes a reference to the Vice President, which is why we have taken this practice question. When you look into the first statement, it reads, the Vice President is elected by an electoral college consisting of members of both the Houses of the Parliament. Yes. When it comes to the President, we have a different electoral college where there what we have is elected members. When it comes to Vice President, we can also have the nominated members, but when it comes to the President, nominated members are not included. And do note, it is by secret ballot and not open ballot. As part of the assignment, you have to put on the comment section where do we have open ballot elections is what you have to put on the comment section. The second statement reads, the oath of office to the Vice President is administered by the Chief Justice of India. This statement is wrong. It is not the Chief Justice of India, but instead it is the President. So second statement is also wrong. When you look into the third statement, held within 6 months is also wrong. This is the condition for the President. So remember, when it comes to the Vice President, the only condition that we have to remember is that it says as soon as possible. We have two important articles. One is Article 68 with respect to the Vice President of India. Then we have Article 62 with respect to the President of India. When you look at the President of India, it says held as soon as possible after and in no case later than 6 months, which means that the presidential elections will have to be executed, implemented within 6 months after the vacancy. There is no such timeline for the Vice President. It only says as soon as possible. So remember, when it comes to the Vice President, there is no fixed timeline. So as soon as possible can also be 8 months. As soon as possible can also be 10 months. It can also be 12 months as well. But when it comes to the President, as soon as possible is fixed with a timeline. That is, the presidential elections will have to be conducted within 6 months after the fall of the vacancy. So the third statement is also wrong. Since the first, second and third statements are wrong, the answer to this would be none. Now let's look into the next practice question. Consider the following statements. The nuclear suppliers group has 24 countries as the members. India is the member of the nuclear suppliers group. Which of the statements given above are correct? The answer to this is neither one nor two. This happens to be a previous year question from the year 2008. When we speak about the nuclear suppliers group, how many members do we have? We have 48 countries who are part of it, and do note India is not part of the nuclear suppliers group. Now let's look into the fact of the day. The fact of the day for today's discussion is Indonesia moving its capital from Jakarta to Borneo. Let us try and understand what is this topic in greater detail. Indonesia has decided to move its capital from Jakarta to a new place in Borneo. Why did Indonesia decide to do so? That is because as of now it feels that Jakarta is congested, it is polluted, it is prone to earthquakes and is rapidly sinking into the Java Sea as well. In order to make sure that people in the country are safe, in order to ensure that we do not have much of pollution, they have planned to move the capital from Jakarta to a place in Borneo. So this is primarily taken into picture because they feel that Jakarta is not safe enough. There are climate change of factors that are being introduced into this place, and moving the current capital Jakarta to the future capital Borneo is what is the initiative taken by the Indonesian government. Why is Indonesia moving its capital? When you consider the present situation, Jakarta is home to about 10 million people, and more number of people are also moving towards Jakarta as well. So it is in this particular backdrop, since they are making use of massive amount of groundwater, this groundwater is being exploited like never before. There are environmental changes that are being introduced as well. There is heavy air and groundwater pollution, and it also results in regular floods in this place. So they want a new and a safer place, which is why they are shifting towards Borneo. But now the Indonesian government has decided it will be moving its capital, but there are some concerns that are voiced by the environmentalist. What are these concerns? One, when you're moving the capital from one place to another, there is a new capital that comes up as well, and that happens to be a place in Borneo. And what is the concern voiced out by the environmentalists? There are large number of species which are present in this place. Let's say for example, we have orangutans, we also have leopards as well, we have wide array of wildlife as well. And once people start moving from Jakarta to this place, there would be massive deforestation, and as a result there will be human animal conflict as well. This can result in drop of these species, and at the same time, since people would be moving from Jakarta to Borneo, there would be environmental concerns, there would be deforestation, there will be felling of trees as well. This can also be a major loss to the environment. And finally, as people also move, there is also natural forest which will be completely eliminated, and this ultimately means that these forests which are acting as the carbon sinks will also be taken off. These are the environmental concerns voiced by the people and the environmentalists in this part of Borneo. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this topic. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.